Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going over my top 10 favorite first watches of 2024. Now, before we get into this video, I do want to say a big thank you to everyone who has watched any of my videos over the last year. I know it haven't really grown the biggest following, but any view, any comment, anyone that's ever reached out and has talked to me about the channel, I really appreciate it. This year has been a lot of fun kind of getting into this. In 2023, I'd uploaded one, I think, two videos maybe, and it was kind of fun doing that, but I was like, I don't know if I am going to enjoy posting these videos and enjoy doing this, and so I just didn't really do anything. And then in 2024, I came up with the idea where I said I wanted to at least post more than I did in 2023, and I went from 2 videos in 2023 to 64 different videos. I believe this might actually be the 65th video of this year, and so it's been a lot of fun just doing these videos, making these. I've had a blast doing it. So again, thank you to anyone who's watched any of these videos, anyone who has subscribed to the channel, or just anyone that's left a comment or has talked to me about liking the videos. It's meant a lot to me. And one of my favorite things, again, with this channel, what I've done, my favorite, I mean, it's hard to say of all the different series and the different things that I've done. It's hard to say what my favorite is, but the idea for this channel, the original series that I'd thought of back in 2021 or whenever, I had the first idea or the first inkling that I wanted to make this channel was my Becoming a Better Cinephile series. Because again, that was the whole point of this channel. If you're new to the channel and you haven't heard me explain the world's worst cinephile, what that name even means, it's just because, I watch a lot of movies, and so a lot of people in my life would refer to me as a cinephile. And I would think about it, and I'm like, there's no way I'm a cinephile because I haven't seen so many classic films. Just because I've seen Madam Web and I've seen, Cats and The Turning, whatever other, of that genre that you want to like put into the bad movies. Just because I've seen these doesn't and haven't seen at that point, The Godfathers and so many other just like the classic staples. I was like, I just never considered myself a cinephile. But if the people in my life that would call me a cinephile, if you're gonna call me a cinephile, I feel like I'm the world's worst one. So again, that's kind of where the idea of the channel name came from. But the idea of my Becoming a Better Cinephile series was just a way for me to recognize that of there's so many classic. I mean, there's things, these amazing films that like I hadn't seen, that I'd heard things about, or I've wanted to see forever, and I've heard things about, and I use this as an opportunity to see that and then review them on the channel. But then there's other things as well, just like classic things. There's a couple that I'm going to talk about in this video that I watched for my Becoming a Better Cinephile series, where if I didn't do that series, there's no way I would have gone and back and watched a couple of these, just because they didn't interest me, or just because I knew that they were like these classic cinematic, feats. It still just didn't interest me, and I was just like, I'm not gonna, waste my time watching that. And then, doing the series, going back and learning to appreciate some of these older films or these classic films that I just have never given the opportunity to, or the chance that the films deserved. I'm now kind of like realizing and seeing these, that it's like there are so many just amazing films. You never know, if there's things you've kind of put off and judged and just kind of said like, oh, that's not for me, and then you watch it and you've comes to find out it is for you, So that's one of the things that I've loved about this channel, this whole journey, this whole experience. So I had this idea because, this year, more so than probably any year really, in the last couple of years, 2023 and 2022, those were the last 2 years where I did a movie a day. So this is my third straight year of finishing the year with 365. I guess this year 366 movies watched. In those previous 2 years, I watched so many of like that current year's movies, and I've still seen probably 100 plus this year. But like the last 2 years, it was like I was pushing 200 of like 2023 releases. This year with the channel and with the Becoming a Better Cinephile series, I really have started dipping into, again, just the classic films. And so a couple days ago, I kind of had this thought of doing this video of ranking my top 10 first watches of non-2024 releases, these classic films that I've now seen on this channel, because again, there's just so many, and it's fun kind of looking back at these and saying like, these are a lot of films that I think a lot of people have seen, but for me, recognizing, looking at them, being like, I finally am seeing these now, in the year 2024. There's just so many great films, and so I'm just excited to compile this list together and to talk about these films. So again, this is just non-2024 releases, because there is a video coming of my top 10 in 2024, as well as my top 10 most, or I guess there'll probably be a top 10 most anticipated for 2025. Those videos are coming. In the next little bit, the most anticipated movie or video is probably going to be first, because the reason it makes sense to do the top 10 2024, like right about now. This is when a lot of people are uploading them onto YouTube, but there's still so many like big movies that I just haven't had the opportunity to see yet because there's so many Christmas releases, and then there's a lot of them that's like if you're in the press, you've been able to see these because they've been at film festivals and stuff, but like people like us don't really get to see them until like January. So I'm holding off on that video for a little bit. It'll probably be mid to late January when that one comes out, but those videos are coming. So this is just top 10 first watches of non-2024 films that I watched this last year. And before we get into the top 10, I do want to give a shout out to the honorable mentions list. Now, what this honorable mentions list is this is just all of these films, first watches of 2024, that I've rated 4 stars. So let's just jump into the honorable mentions. Back to the Future, Before Midnight, Boyhood, Burn After Reading, Call Me By Your Name, Dazed and Confused, Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, Following, The Godfather, The Godfather Part 2, The Lobster, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, School of Rock, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, The Town, War of the Planet of the Apes, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Zodiac. And then I also want to give a special honorable mention to one film that actually rated a 4.5. This is at the end of this, there was 11 films that I gave a 4.5 or a 5 to. This is the one that didn't quite crack the top 10, and it's Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. And now on to the top 10, coming in at number 10, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Now, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, that is like the whole kind of intro, the spiel I was doing at the beginning of saying that there's some of these films that I just disregarded and said, that's not for me, I'm not going to appreciate it. This is the one, that, as well as Doctor Strangelove, which got an honorable mention. Those were the two that I was kind of talking about where I was like, this isn't for me, I'm not going to be interested, I'm not a big Western guy, I'm like, I just, I'm not interested in seeing this. And the only reason I gave it a shot, again, is because of my Becoming a Better Cinephile series. And this was the first episode in the Becoming a Better Cinephile series. And the way that I came up, because a lot of them later on in the series, a lot of them were films that I was just kind of, there was other reasons why, that I was watching those. This very first one, the reason this came about was because I had a random wheel generator that I just put a list. I have a graphic on my phone, but it's it's the top 100 bucket list movies. It's just some random Facebook graphic that I saved years ago, and so I put all of the films on that bucket list graphic that I hadn't seen into just a random wheel name generator thing, and spun it, and it landed on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And I'll tell you, I don't know if I mentioned it in the video, I was kind of a little not nervous or like I just, when that was the first episode in that series, I just thought this wasn't a film that I was interested in. I thought I was gonna watch it. I thought I was gonna hate it. I thought I was just gonna give it some 3-star review saying, it's not quite for me. And instead, I watched it and I loved it. It's one of those that I didn't realize, obviously, it's a classic film and that there's things you've heard about the film. I didn't know a whole ton about it. And so going in and all of a sudden seeing so many different things that, mainly the score of the film, but other parts of the film as well. You see these things, you see these elements of the story, and you realize that those have become things that are kind of like classics, features in Hollywood. It's something that, again, it's just the score especially has just been so used so many times. Anytime you have these standoffs or any sort of kind of something that maybe is like parodying a western or kind of giving you that western feel, and you just get that classic score from this movie. There's so many things about this that as I was watching this, I was just so thoroughly entertained. I was in it. I believe I can't remember now off the top of my head, it was pushing 3 hours, I think. Maybe it was a little over 3 hours. It was a long film, and every step of the way I was completely hooked. It was one of those, for me, this seems kind of a little crazy. I think I know Clint Eastwood more as a director as opposed to an actor, and that was kind of one of the first things of really kind of seeing not only just Clint Eastwood as an actor, but seeing young Clint Eastwood. and I thought he was phenomenal in the film. Again, just so many things about the film that just completely blew me away, and so this absolutely had to have a spot in the top 10. Coming in at number 9, Signs. Now, I watched Signs for, I don't think it's the last video I uploaded, it might be 2 videos ago, but I uploaded my M. Night Shyamalan ranked video. It's another series that I like doing on this channel of finding a director and just watching their whole filmography and then ranking them. And so Signs was actually one of those, it's like it was the one classic M. Night Shyamalan film that I hadn't seen yet. Everything else, like the kind of the consensus best films of his filmography, I had seen all of those. Signs was the one that I've just passed it by so many times, and it's one of those that it makes no sense why I hadn't seen it. I like M. Night Shyamalan. I like horror movies, although this wasn't, necessarily the scariest movie ever made, but I do like these kind of horror movies. I do like, it was well received. It's like a classic film that, like, even though I knew one scene, I knew the scene of the alien kind of coming out from around the bush. I still hadn't seen, not too much else of the rest of the film had been spoiled for me. So it's one of those that, like, all the signs were there. I knew I would like this film, and I still had just pushed it off for years and years. And that's what's crazy about kind of movies and film. And we all have those films that you're ashamed to tell someone that you haven't seen, and sometimes it's things like The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, or these films that you're like, I haven't seen it, I know I should see it, but I've kind of just pushed it off because I just don't know if I'm going to be into it. I don't know, I'm not really interested in seeing it right now. Signs didn't fit that category. There can be films that are like that, where it's like, you're gonna love it, and you still just don't make the time, or seek it out, or you just kind of let it go by, and all of a sudden it's been years since you wanted to see something and you just never got around to seeing it. So that's really what Signs was for me. It was a film I knew I was gonna love, and sure enough, I finally gave it the chance this year. I did love it. It was a lot better than I thought it was gonna be going into it too, because I'd heard there's some things, some people are kind of a little more critical of Signs in terms of, like, a lot of what is in M. Night Shyamalan's filmography. But again, I just watched it and I was kind of like almost trying to, like, lower the bar a little bit, and I was still just kind of blown away by how so much of that film just worked for me. I'm gonna put in the description for this video the links to all of the, if I reference another video on my in this video, I'll post the link to it for you to go check it out. So I'm going to post the link to that M. Night Shyamalan ranked video. If you want to hear more of my complete thoughts on that film, I go into a lot more depth of it on that video. But we're going to put Signs here at number 9. Coming in at number 8, Mad Max Fury Road. And this is another one where I think, this film came out maybe a little bit before I was really getting into watching a ton of movies and really getting into it, but it's also one of those, it definitely was before I would go and, like, if I knew it was a part of a franchise and I hadn't seen any of the other films, like the older films, I definitely wasn't getting around to it. So even if there was at some point some interest for me in seeing Mad Max Fury Road, I wasn't going to watch it without having seen the other ones, and I didn't have the desire to go back and watch the previous films. Obviously, once we get around to this year, to Furiosa coming out in theaters, before I went and saw that, I knew that I had to see everything leading up before it, because I don't want to go into these franchise films and these, especially in a franchise that I know is good, that I've heard amazing things about. I don't want to cheapen my own experience by going and not having seen everything else before it. So I took the time and put in the effort to watch, the original, is it a trilogy? The original Mad Max trilogy. And, I thought they were all okay. And as I was watching them, I was kind of getting nervous about Fury Road, because I'd heard amazing things about that, because, it's one of those that big, in kind of just the Oscars world, if you're watching Oscars related content on YouTube, people will reference it because it was this big tech player that year and it did this and this. And so it's like you hear from it from that side, you hear from it from people that are fans of the Mad Max franchise, you hear about it from people that are just big blockbuster movie fans, so it's like from so many different pockets, so many different people just absolutely praising this movie. So I went in nervous because I was just knowing how much everyone loved this movie. I didn't love the first, couple in this franchise, and I'm coming to this one and I'm thinking, I'm kind of nervous that this is going to be a letdown and it's not going to be as amazing as I am hoping for. And again, it's the same thing where it's just going into that a whole new experience. It's obviously the same world, different characters, but we're telling just a different story, and there was something about it just from start to finish that was captivating, and it was really cool as well because it's this film where well, a lot of these that are on this list I hadn't seen, but I still knew a lot about them. This is one of those I knew people loved Mad Max Fury Road, and I knew a lot of the that's bait, like the different kind of memes or different clips or different shots and stuff from the film, but like I knew nothing about the plot. I knew nothing about what the Mad Max world even was, kind of going into that journey of going through these films. And so I just had a phenomenal time. Charlize Theron is amazing. Tom Hardy does an excellent job in the film as well. And so it's one of those that love the acting, love the performances, love the way that the film was shot. A lot of the action scenes and the scenes when they're on the just driving through, especially the scenes where they're fighting, and so people are constantly jumping on and off vehicles and big explosions, and you see the way that they're able to film these with practical, actually flipping some of these cars and doing a lot of different things where it's like you saw, like, just in today's day and age of these big massive blockbusters, that these big massive action sequence set pieces don't always look the best because there's a lot of CGI and there's a lot of other things going on. Mad Max Fury Road just made all of these action scenes so intense, so exciting, just riveting to watch. And so, just again, from start to finish, it was one of these films, just an experience for me where I was just kind of hooked the entire way through. Coming in at number 7, Alien. And before we get too much into Alien, I'm going to cheat a little bit here and say that this is Alien slash Aliens. Gonna give a shout out to Aliens as well. And Aliens, I gave a 4 star, so Aliens itself technically would be in the honorable mentions. But I just kind of want to clump them together here. Just anytime I like these top 10 lists, anytime I can squeeze more than 10 films in, I want to do that because it's just fun giving a lot of different films kind of the proper credit or shout out. I like to kind of mention as many different films as possible because that's just kind of what I view this channel as kind of a celebration of film. So I like to, again, just give a lot of different films a shout, and so we're going to put them both kind of here at number 7. I did like Alien more, and this is another one of those where it made no sense really why I hadn't seen Alien, because I'd heard great things about it. Again, I like horror movies, and I knew this was kind of considered one of the best horror movies ever made. So again, this is one of those where it's like, there's no real excuse for why I hadn't seen it. I think the excuse, and I've talked about this a couple times on my channel and some of these Becoming a Better Cinephile episodes, I think the real excuse, and the only reason I didn't, is I haven't always been the biggest fan of going back and watching movies pre, like, 90s. Like, anytime I go back past the 90s, I used to be so obnoxious when watching films. Like, I can think of the example I use a lot is the very first time I watched Halloween. I remember watching it and seeing it and going back and like watching an older film and saying like, okay, movies look so much better now. So like this isn't good because movies look so better and they so much better now and they're shot differently. And I remember just like so many of the criticisms and critiques and things that I was putting on Halloween. I wasn't giving it its credit, saying like, oh, I've seen this done better in other films, so I'm negatively viewing this. But through this series and going back and finally watching older films, and I don't even want to say older, like I'm not even talking about, like these, I'm making it sound like I'm watching films from the 30s or something, but just films from before I was born that previous younger me would have been a little more cynical or just kind of passive and just disregarding it because it's older and it doesn't look as good as what movies look today, which is also kind of crazy now saying out loud because movies don't necessarily always look better today. But going back and being able to do this series of watching these older films has really given me an appreciation for being able to watch a movie and say like Halloween, I can watch that now and say, put myself in that time. Imagine when this movie came out, when it was new. I can say so many other films do whatever Halloween's trying to do better, but now I can acknowledge the only reason these films are doing it is because Halloween did it first. Or you go back and find these older films and you say like they're the pioneers, and so many other films are emulating or just kind of copying what they're doing. And so that's something that for me, I think that's the biggest reason why I've always been hesitant going back, at least in the past. Now, obviously, it's with this series, I love going back and watching, these films pre 90s, pre 80s, and being able to appreciate, watch him from a different headspace than how I used to view these films, to be able to watch it and appreciate it. And so I'm so glad that, that's kind of the reason I think I was pushing off Alien for so long. Finally being able to go back and watch it now. And this is one of those too where it's like, even if I didn't have that whole excuse baked in of I just don't like watching older films, this is still really good for even like that standard. So I just had a phenomenal time watching Alien. It was so fun. I mean, the whole Alien franchise as well, leading up to Alien Romulus. I just had an excellent time watching this film, watching the whole franchise. This is another one where I have a full breakdown video on my channel on a Becoming a Better Cinephile series, so I'll put the link to that in the description as well if you want to see my full 25 probably minute thoughts on the first Alien film. So we're putting that again, just a great film. Had a great time watching it. We're putting it number 7 on my list. Coming in at number 6, Million Dollar Baby. Now this is the most of all the movies on this list. This is the one that I've watched the most recently. It was just a couple weeks ago that I watched Million Dollar Baby for the first time, and so it's kind of fun to see Clint Eastwood as an actor pop up twice on this. Obviously, one a little while ago, in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Now this one here, Million Dollar Baby, and it's also, it kind of goes along with the idea of I knew Clint Eastwood a little bit more as a director. Obviously, as I watched this because he directed this. I watched this before I saw Juror Number 2, was the reason I gave this one the opportunity. And again, Million Dollar Baby is another one of those for so many different reasons that I would have wanted to watch, whether it be for, just because I'm a big sports fan, I like sports movies. Wanted to watch it because it's a Best Picture winner. I want to go back and watch as many Best Picture winners as I can to just, I feel like that's kind of an important step in being able to actually call yourself a cinephile, is by, embracing that and understanding, the films that have won Best Picture at the Oscars. I've just heard amazing things about Million Dollar Baby. There's so many different reasons why Million Dollar Baby is a film that I should have seen by now, and I'm glad that I finally took the opportunity to see it. It is one of those that when I was watching it, I was kind of nervous because it's another one of those, and part of the reason I think where there's these classic films that I haven't seen before, another reason why maybe I'm hesitant to see them, is because I kind of know what happens. I maybe know the ending, or I know the big twist, or I know something, and so I'm always kind of nervous that first watch, because I'm not a great example. I referenced the M. Night Shyamalan ranked video that I just posted. I talked about this a lot during my breakdown of The Sixth Sense. The first time I saw The Sixth Sense, I knew the twist. I knew what was happening. So I watched the movie and I got to the end and I was like, okay, cool. I was watching it knowing too much information, and I was kind of like, yeah, I see how it all works. I see how it all made sense. I see why this is good, but I already kind of knew it, so it didn't really blow my mind. Seeing The Sixth Sense a second time, again, knowing everything now about the whole film, I was able to almost kind of just forget it and watch it as its own standalone thing. Obviously, I know how it ends, but I'm going to watch this and I'm going to pretend like I don't. I'm going to watch this as a kind of very organic and normal viewing experience, how I should have seen this for the first time without knowing anything. And it completely changed my mind for how I viewed the film, and I ended up loving it so much more in a second rewatch. So with Million Dollar Baby, it was kind of the same idea. I knew not the twist, but I knew the event that happened, and I've always been kind of nervous because I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch this because it's going to get to that end. I already know the ending, and it's just going to ruin it for me. But I still, I gave the film a chance, and I did what I did for my Sixth Sense viewing. I pretended like I didn't know anything. I was watching it as earnestly as possible from start to finish, and suddenly the event that I thought was the big event at the end happens about maybe 2/3 of the way. It's kind of like at the end of the second act. And all of a sudden I had this realization, this experience of, there is 40 more minutes or so of this movie. I don't know what happens from this point on. And so now all of a sudden I'm getting this viewing experience of thinking so much of it was going to be ruined because I thought I knew the ending. And now all of a sudden I'm getting a bonus 40 minutes of a movie that I didn't know existed. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what was going on. And those 40-ish minutes or so just absolutely broke me. It was a very emotional experience kind of watching that movie in that kind of light of knowing, like, thinking I know what's going to happen, and all of a sudden it's not exactly what I think is going to happen. It ended up just being kind of a very memorable movie watching experience for me, and it's a film that I ended up kind of thinking I was going to like. I ended up loving it, I think, a whole lot more than I thought I was going to, so it absolutely deserves its spot here at number 6. Coming in at number 5, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And then this is the same thing with Alien. We're kind of cheating and we're putting two in here. Not only is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes getting a shout out here, but so is the original Planet of the Apes from 1968. Now, it's kind of crazy to think, if you're kind of paying attention, if you've noticed, that means there's now 4 Planet of the Apes films that have gotten a shout out in this video, as 2 of the others were both in the honorable mentions. What's interesting here with Planet of the Apes is if I didn't lump these together in one thing, I think Planet of the Apes, the original from 1968, also would have made this top 10. Like, this wasn't even an honorable mention. Combining these two is what kind of brought The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly a spot here on the list, is the way I kind of view it, because I think both of these would have had their own individual spot here in the top 10. I loved the original Planet of the Apes that much, and that's another one too, where if you know if you don't know the twist of the original Planet of the Apes, just go and watch it. But even if you do, give it a shot and pretend like you don't know what's going to happen, and you're just going to have a great time with the original Planet of the Apes. But Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is my favorite in the franchise. I think it's kind of the consensus. I think it's a lot of people's favorite. It's the second film of the did the reboot trilogy? Is that what it was? The Matt Reeves Planet of the Apes films. It was the second one in that franchise that's from, I guess, how old is this? It's a little over a decade, or they're about a decade old. Um, it was one of those that, again, when those films were in theaters, I was completely dismissive of the Planet of the Apes franchise for a couple reasons. Of one, I just hadn't seen any of the originals. I just was like, and it's just the way I'm wired. I don't like jumping into a franchise midway through. I want to see the whole franchise. So I was kind of like dismissive, because I was like, oh, I haven't seen the originals, I'm just not going to see any of these. But I was also dismissive in the sense that I used to just foolishly, I thought that the Planet of the Apes were just dumb ape movies. I thought it was, oh, what if there was apes and humans and the apes can talk, and just thought it was like, just, I don't know how to describe it. I used to just think that these were just kind of these dumb movies with an absurd premise. And now watching these, it's crazy to think I even ever had that thought, because yeah, there are talking apes, but these are some of the most emotional films. Like, Caesar as a character from the reboot trilogy is just a phenomenal character, to where you can watch this movie and it's any of like the absurdities of watching a movie with a talking ape, like, you don't even care, because you're so bought into this world, you're so bought into the story, you're so bought into the drama and everything that's happening, that these are just phenomenal films. The entire franchise is amazing. So this is actually one of those. There's 2 different videos that are going to be in the description for this, that you can click the Planet of the Apes franchise ranked video. So that's where I'm going to give it a little. I believe these are 1 and 2 in that video, so you can watch those 2 if you want my more complete thoughts on both of those films. But there's also the original Planet of the Apes. I did It's Becoming a Better Cinephile episode on that one as well, because again, I was just kind of blown away, and I wasn't planning on doing that episode at all, because my entire plan was just to watch the whole franchise, watch Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the new one, in theaters, and then make maybe a ranking video of like the whole franchise, and that was all I was going to do on that. But when it came to watching that first film, I was so blown away that I was like, this was really good, and I wasn't expecting that at all. So I absolutely had to, do its own video. So both of those links are going to be in there if you want to hear my more complete thoughts on those 2. But I just love the whole Planet of the Apes franchise. Coming in at number 4, 12 Years a Slave. Now, I finally got around to watching this one a month or so ago, before seeing Blitz, Steve McQueen's new film. And 12 Years a Slave is one of those that, more so than I think other films, there's a couple films that I maybe kind of fall in this bucket. Schindler's List is one that is like gonna be in the same bucket. It's like a bucket of films that I haven't seen, and I know they're good films. I know they're gonna be good films, but they're so heavy, and they're so. I know going into it that it's going to be an exhausting just experience of watching something that, again, it's a good film, but it's just the subject matter is going to be draining. It's going to require a lot of commitment to watching it, because it's not like it's some easy movie you can just throw on in the background and be doing something else and whatever's happening in the background. You can kind of poke in every couple minutes. This is a film that's a heavy subject matter that is requiring your undivided attention, and that can be draining and that can be exhausting. And so there's some movies that I think are in that category. 12 Years a Slave was one that was in that category for me. So finally, kind of stopped with the excuses, gave it the opportunity, gave it the chance to watch it, and it's a powerful emotional experience. And I think this is one of those movies you hear a lot of people say this kind of sentiment with a lot of films, this one especially, of it was great, I don't want to watch it again. And I think that's kind of how I am with this as well, in the sense of a big part of my channel you'll see multiple times and you'll hear me talk about with a lot of these films, especially my Finding My Letterbox 4 series. I love rewatching movies that I love rewatching films, and I'm sure there will be a day, there will be a time where I'll watch 12 Years a Slave again. But it's one of those that, again, because it's so draining and because it's so emotional, and because it impacts you so heavily, it's not like a comfort movie. It's not something you can just throw on and enjoy watching it every single time, over and over and over again. But with that said, again, it's phenomenal. It is a masterpiece. It is. I totally understand, why it. I guess I didn't look it up how many Oscars it did win. Obviously, I know it won Best Picture. I remember hearing just amazing things for. I'm gonna butcher his Chiwetel Ejiofor. Is that how you say his name? I've never really learned or watched anyone actually pronounce his name. But like Lupita Nyong'o, that's the first time I ever heard of her, and she's one of my favorite actresses. So many different things. There were so many signs for this that I knew I was going to, and again, not enjoy is kind of the hard word here. I knew I was going to appreciate and really like the way, the finished product, the art that I'm experiencing here, and I did. It was absolutely, it's emotional, and all the things that, and it's what film is. It captures and it helps you come in contact, or appreciate those emotions that it's trying to draw out of you, and the film masterfully does that. Coming in at number 3, The Silence of the Lambs. And here's another one where it makes no sense. It's a movie that I always have wanted to watch. I knew I would like it if I gave it the chance, and it's just one of those that you just push it off and you put it off and you put it off. And I think it's easy also, where a lot of us do this with the films that, we know that there's a film that's kind of the shameful secret of, like, you don't want to admit that you've never seen it. And I think it's also easy to just continue putting those films off because in your head you think it's not going anywhere. There's so many new things or new movies, and so it's like you want to watch all the new stuff because then you can be in the whatever the pop culture, like the moment is. When a Wicked comes out, you got to go see Wicked because you got to be involved in all of the pop culture discourse and everything that's going on with whatever's happening right then, right now. When there's a film that's, The Silence of the Lambs, a film that is good and you're gonna like, but it's been out for 30 years, or it's been there, it's always going to be there, you can go back to it later. I think that's kind of the justification that we use sometimes, and then it's why you never, at least for a while, don't get back around to going and seeing that movie that you've wanted to see. So I'm glad I finally was able to not use the excuse anymore. Again, in the description there's going to be a link for my Becoming a Better Cinephile episode on The Silence of the Lambs if you want to hear my more complete thoughts. I finally watched it because, and the reason I watched it, the reason I gave for finally giving it a shot, was it was Longlegs was coming out in theaters, and one of the trailers had the thing of, like, best, or a modern remake, or a modern today's Silence of the Lambs. I can't remember what the exact verbiage was that was used in the trailer, but it was one of those where I'm like, that's high praise for your movie. If you're in your trailer, you're invoking the name of The Silence of the Lambs. I knew how much weight and how impactful that movie was. Again, another Best Picture winner, one of the few, if the only, horror movie to win Best Picture. I'm not 100% positive on that. I'd have to look it up, but again, it's another one of those films I knew I was going to like it, and I just had put it off for so long. I'm glad that this was finally the year where I gave it the shot. It's coming in at number 3. And coming in at number 2, No Country for Old Men. And here's another one where, again, link will be in the description for the Becoming a Better Cinephile episode for No Country for Old Men. This is another one of those that I had put off. I knew it was a Best Picture winner, so I knew eventually I would see it. But I just kind of, again, I think I've noticed I kind of have a judgment or a bias for films that like westerns. And I had just before seeing this, I'd seen some of the images. I didn't really know anything about the plot, but I just kind of was like, oh, it's a western. I don't really, want to see it. And then obviously watching it, and when I watched it, however many months, it's been 6 or 7 months at this point probably, being just completely blown away the entire time watching this film, of being like, this is not what I was expecting. I didn't know anything about. I guess I knew some of the actors that were in it. Like I knew Javier Bardem was in it, and I'd seen pictures of his character, but I didn't really know anything about the character of Anton Chigurh. I didn't know he was this amazing villain. I didn't know he was going to be like one of these films. I think I knew that he won the Oscar for the role. I'm not 100% positive, but I didn't realize that it was like his villain performance was like what propelled this film and was what made the film go. I thought that maybe, a lot of these good films that have great villains, they're just kind of there for their scenes, but he is like the whole movie. So much of the movie is just kind of, it's this cat and mouse between our two main characters, but so much of the attention is given to the villain, and he's this compelling, just, I mean, a because of the performance by Javier Bardem, but also just because of the writing of the character, the way that they crafted him, the way that they were able to, again, just shape his story is so compelling, and is such an intense figure that's just, going throughout this entire narrative, to where, the entire movie, anytime you think you kind of have an idea of what's happening or where this is going, all of a sudden it just is constantly getting derailed by this amazing performance, this amazing character that is constantly just changing what is happening. And so the entire movie, you're on the edge of your seat, and by the end, I was just kind of, my breath was taken, and I was just kind of just shocked and in awe of where it went, and the audacity of kind of where it ended, and how it left you there kind of with some unanswered questions, but also just kind of giving you this story about these characters and about this moment in their lives. It was just, the entire thing from start to finish was just phenomenal. Again, so there is the link to that becoming a better cinephile episode in the description if you want to hear my more complete thoughts on this one. And coming in at number one, Before Sunrise. And here we have kind of our third cheat, because not only is it Before Sunrise, I'm also giving a shout out to Before Sunset. And this is the same as the Planet of the Apes, where if I didn't combine them into one category or one slot here, Before Sunset also would have been, and it probably would have been like bordering top five. They both would have absolutely been in the top 10, but so we're combining them into one to give more films a shout out. But the Before trilogy, obviously Before Midnight was mentioned in the honorable mentions as well, so I just clearly loved the entire trilogy. This is another one of those that I knew forever that I was going to love these. I have heard just nothing but amazing things about this trilogy, and in my head, this was what I thought Richard Linklater was, because I knew so much about this trilogy, or heard, I guess I didn't know a ton about the trilogy other than how much people love it, but I knew it was directed by Richard Linklater, and so I thought that that's like who Richard Linklater was as a director. And so it was fun when I did my Richard Linklater ranked video, so that's also going to be in the description if you want to hear my thoughts on all three of the Before trilogy. But I knew going in that those were going to be like my favorite of his filmography, and then when I realized that his filmography is all over the place, he has so many different films, whether it's just other dramas or these intimate stories, but then he has like these big kind of like family comedies, these big, The School of Rock, Dazed and Confused, also both in the honorable mentions. He has this other side to him, but this is still like, this is core Richard Linklater for me. This and like Boyhood, like this is like what Richard Linklater, this is when he's at his peak, this is when he's at his best, and it's just, everything was firing with the whole Before trilogy for me. It's one of those that I'm almost a little ashamed that I was so behind on it, and I've let it go for so long, because instantly, again, I like Before Midnight, I really like Before Sunset, I love Before Sunrise. Like, that is a phenomenal movie. It is one of my favorite films of all time, and that's only on one watch. And so this is one of those that I can't wait to watch, again, the whole Before trilogy, but specifically Before Sunrise many more times throughout the rest of my life, because this is the fun of this series of going back and watching these films, and because you're going to find a film like this where it's just like it's an instant love. You watch it and you're like, that is one of my favorite films. Like, this is something that, could go in my letterbox for. Like, this is something that is like so my film. And it's just fun to, when you go back and watch these films that you've put off for so long, because yeah, you're gonna find a couple here and there that you watch and you're like, it wasn't all it was shaped up to be. I didn't love it as much. But then you're gonna find some like this where it's just becomes an instant classic. So Before Sunrise, and I guess Before Sunset, since I'm looping them and clumping them here together at number one, absolutely my favorite first watches of the year. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of these movies that I've listed here. Also, just let me know what some of your favorite first watches of 2024 were for, non-2024 films. It's fun to just kind of see what are the films that you finally stopped giving, making the excuses and finally got around to seeing. So it'll be a lot of fun just kind of reading those down below in the comments. And again, just a big thank you to everyone for the support and watching this year. This is going to be my last video of 2024, but don't worry, because I believe on January 1st, 2025, there will be another video, and it's going to be, if you saw the last video on my channel, introducing the themed Letterboxd 4 video. On January 1st, I will be announcing kind of the preview episode for what January's category is, so make sure you're tuned in for that. And again, I am super excited for 2025. I think, 60 it was like 64, 65 videos that I uploaded this year. I think there's a good chance that I might break that record again even next year, because I already have so many ideas and the things I want to do, and moving forward I have so many different just ideas, and so I'm so excited to bring you more content in 2025. So make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of those updates. And again, thank you so much for watching this video. Have a great day.